couple years ago, back when I was still living in that slightly crooked old farmhouse rental on Maple Ridge Road with my roommates Jenna and Luis, I reconnected with this guy named Trevor. Technically, it was more like he reconnected with me. We had known each other loosely through a mutual friend, Derek, back in high school, and there had always been this vague, low-level, maybe he's interesting energy, but nothing ever happened. Then one random afternoon, out of nowhere, he messaged me, saying he'd been thinking about me and wondering if I wanted to hang out sometime. At the time, I remember thinking, sure, why not? I wasn't exactly busy, and I figured at worst it would be mildly awkward, and at best, maybe fun. He suggested coming over, bringing some music, and just chilling for a couple of hours. He said he was really into sharing playlists and discovering new artists, which sounded harmless enough. We agreed he'd come by around 4 p.m. on a Thursday, so that day I cleaned up a bit. Not in an obsessive way, just enough so the place didn't look like 3 20-somethings lived there, which, to be fair, we did. Jenna was home, and her girlfriend Marisol was over too, and they were hanging out upstairs. Luis had just left for work, so it was relatively quiet. 4 o'clock came and went. No Trevor. I didn't think much of it at first. 5 or 10 minutes late, whatever. But by 4:30, I checked my phone and still nothing. No text, no update, no running behind. Around 5:15, I was already kind of over it. I had changed into sweatpants, put on a show, and mentally written the whole thing off. Then around 5:45, my phone buzzed. Hey, sorry, got held up at something, on my way now. No explanation, no detail, just that. I stared at the message for a second, debating whether I even wanted to reply, but I ended up just sending back, okay. At that point, I figured he'd be there by like 6:15, maybe 6:30 at the latest. Reasonable, right? Nope. It was 7:30 when I finally heard a car pull up outside. By then, I was deep into irritation territory. Not even mild annoyance anymore. Just that specific kind of frustration where you're already regretting agreeing to something before it even properly starts. I opened the door, and there he was. Trevor stepped out of his car wearing a full suit and tie. Not like business casual, not like I came from work and loosened my tie. No, this was a full, crisp, formal suit situation on a Thursday evening for what was supposed to be a laid-back music hangout in a slightly run-down farmhouse. I blinked at him. Hey, he said, like this was completely normal. Hey, I replied, trying not to let the confusion show too obviously on my face. We walked inside, and before I could even say anything about how late he was, he stopped in the kitchen and just stared at the cabinets. These are incredible, he said. I actually thought he was joking. They were not incredible. They were old, slightly warped, and one of them didn't even close properly unless you lifted it a little first. Oh, I said. Yeah, they're something. He ran his hand along one of the doors like he was inspecting a luxury feature in a showroom. The craftsmanship, he went on. You don't see this anymore. I exchanged a look with myself internally because there was no one else around to share the moment with. Then he moved on to the floor. These could use some work, he said, nodding seriously. I could come by this weekend and fix them. I hadn't asked. I didn't want that. I barely knew him. That's okay, I said. The landlord handles stuff like that. He didn't seem to register the hint at all. Yeah, but I enjoy projects, he replied. At that point, I was already mentally exhausted, and we hadn't even left the kitchen. I decided to just move things along and gave him a quick tour of the place. When we got upstairs, Jenna and Marisol were in Jenna's room, and Trevor immediately locked onto the drum set in the corner. "Oh, can I play?" he asked. Before I could even answer, I said, "No." At the exact same time, Marisol said, "Sure." I turned and stared at her with the widest eyes I could manage, trying to telepathically communicate. "Please no, this is already weird enough." Trevor, completely oblivious, took the sure and ran with it. He sat down and started tapping on the drums, not even really playing, just making noise while talking. "These are decent," he said, "but the set I used to have was like $5,000, same kind Metallica uses." Jenna raised an eyebrow. I tried not to visibly roll my eyes, but I'm pretty sure I failed. Then he got hot. Without missing a beat, he took off his suit jacket, folded it very deliberately, and said, "It's Armani." He placed it down like it was some kind of ceremonial object, and as he did, a metal clip slipped out and hit the floor. He picked it up and held it out slightly. "That's my Gucci money clip," he said. "It doesn't really work anymore because I used to carry so much cash. It's stretched out." I just stared at him. I don't think I even responded. Inside my head, I was already at, how do I end this politely? But it kept going. He started talking about Looney Tunes, then somehow transitioned into Shaq, then toothpaste, and then mid-sentence he just stopped and said, "I forgot what I was talking about." "Don't ask me," I said. "You weren't making sense." He laughed like that was charming. It was not. Eventually, I managed to steer him back downstairs, determined to at least attempt the original plan of exchanging music. Even though my expectations were now extremely low, he sat down for about 30 seconds before saying, "Hey, I need to use the restroom." "Yeah, it's right there," I said. He went in and closed the door. 5 minutes passed, then 10. At that point, I was sitting on the couch, staring at the hallway, thinking, what is happening in there? I even texted Jenna. "He's been in the bathroom for 10 minutes?" She replied instantly. "Oops." Finally, he came out like nothing had happened. "I need to grab something from my car," he said. "Okay," I replied. He left, and I could see through the window that his car was still running. 5 minutes later, he came back inside, wearing a fedora, a full suit and tie, now paired with a fedora. I laughed. I couldn't help it. "What?" he said. "You don't like it?" "I mean," I said, still laughing, "it's a look." Then he casually mentioned, "Yeah, my car's been running this whole time. I forgot to turn it off." I just nodded because honestly, at that point, nothing surprised me anymore. Then he said he needed to use the bathroom again. That's when I started actively trying to think of an escape plan. He went back in, and I sat there, scrolling through my phone, half hoping something would come up that I could use as an excuse. And somehow, miraculously, it did. My friend Kayla called me. I answered, and she was genuinely panicked. She needed to take her daughter to the hospital and asked if I could come watch her other kids. It was a real emergency, and I felt bad for her, obviously. But at the exact same time, there was this overwhelming sense of relief. When Trevor came out, I told him I had to go immediately. "My friend needs me," I said. "I have to leave now." He nodded seriously. "I totally get it. My brother has autism." I didn't even respond to that. I just grabbed my keys, opened the door, and stood there, making it very clear that this interaction was over. "Bye," I said. "Yeah, bye," he replied. And that was that. When I got back later that night, Jenna, Marisol, and I sat in the kitchen, trying to process what had just happened. We even checked the bathroom, half-jokingly, to make sure he hadn't done anything weird like an upper decker or something. Everything looked normal, but the whole thing felt off. A few weeks later, I found out through Derek that Trevor had been arrested for cocaine possession. and suddenly the long bathroom trips made a lot more sense. About 6 months after that, I was out at a bar with some friends when I got a message from him. He said he had turned his life around, that he was clean now, and that he wanted to become a speaker for drug addiction and help people recover, and honestly, good for him. That's genuinely a positive thing. But drunk me was not in the mood to entertain it. So I replied, "Cool, but I'm pretty sure you did drugs in my bathroom." He responded, "Probably." That was the last time we ever spoke. And to this day, whenever I think about weird, uncomfortable, or just outright baffling social interactions, that night with Trevor in the Armani suit and the fedora always comes back to me like a fever dream I somehow lived through in real life.